My rental car sputtered once, twice, and then gave a death rattle before the engine cut out completely. I coasted onto the gravel shoulder just past a green sign that read mile marker 47. Nothing else for miles but scrub brush and heat haze. The Nevada desert has a way of making you feel like the last living person on Earth. No houses, no stores, no shade, just a horizon that vibrated with heat and mocked me with how endless it looked. My cell showed a single bar, then none. When I tried to call roadside assistance, the call died after a click of static. I sat there for a while with the windows cracked, listening to the groan of cooling metal. The silence pressed in, broken only by the ticking of the engine and the faint whistle of wind through dried weeds. That was when I saw the truck. A semi's silhouette shimmered into view down the highway, red cab catching sunlight as it barreled closer. I felt a rush of relief. Finally, another human being. I stood outside, waving. The truck slowed, brakes sighing, until it came to a heavy stop a few feet ahead. The driver's door opened. "Afternoon, miss," the man called down. His voice was deep, with that worn-out friendliness of someone used to small talk on the road. "Car trouble." "Yeah," I said. "It just died on me." He hopped down, boots hitting gravel with a thud. He was in his 50s maybe, heavy-set but strong, sunburnt face under a faded ball cap. His name patch read Earl. "Well, let's see what we got here," he said, wiping his hands on his jeans before leaning under the hood. At first, everything felt normal. Earl hummed tunelessly while poking at the engine. He asked where I was headed, if I had water, if anyone knew I was out here. I told him the basics: Las Vegas, freelance photography, crossing the state to meet a client. That's when something shifted. "You were at the La Paloma Hotel last night, right? Over in L.A.?" The words froze me in place. I hadn't told him that. I hadn't even mentioned Los Angeles. Yeah," I said slowly. "How do you know that?" He didn't answer, just smiled, kept tinkering under the hood. A chill cut through the desert heat. Then he said, almost offhandedly, "Your client. What was her name, Ms. Ramirez? She treat you well?" I stepped back, pulse pounding. There was no way. Those details were private, not online, not visible from the outside. He couldn't have known. I glanced at his truck. The passenger side door was shut tight, but the cab loomed larger than life, like a beast crouched on the roadside. For the first time, I noticed the CB radio antenna rising like a whip from the roof. Earl straightened, wiping his hands. "Looks like your alternator's shot. Won't be running again till it's fixed." He patted the hood as if finalizing a decision. "I can give you a lift. There's a garage 30 miles up." My instincts screamed no. "I appreciate it," I said carefully, "but I'll wait for AAA. I think I saw a signal a minute ago." "Suit yourself," he said with a shrug. "But you won't last long in this heat. Shade's scarce." He climbed back into his cab. I should have been relieved he was leaving, but before he closed the door, I heard him speak into his CB. "Got one. Female, 29, dark hair, blue sedan. Mile marker 47. Repeat, mile marker 47. My stomach dropped. I stood frozen in the hot wind, trying to breathe quietly. Earl caught my eyes in his side mirror. He smiled again, this time thinner, tighter, and then the door shut with a slam. The truck's engine rumbled to life. I thought he was pulling away, but instead he idled, headlights glaring even in daylight. I backed toward the desert, then turned and ran. The heat was brutal, radiating up through my sneakers. Each step sank into gritty sand and stone. My throat went dry within minutes, but adrenaline carried me. I cut away from the road, hoping the brush would hide me. Behind me, the semi's horn blared once, long and mocking. I crouched low, weaving through clumps of sagebrush, ears straining for the crunch of boots or the grind of tires. All I heard was my heartbeat and the rasp of my breath. For 10 minutes, maybe 20, I wandered deeper until the highway was just a line of shimmer in the distance. I stumbled across a faint service road, 2 ruts carved into the sand, barely visible. Following it felt like gambling, but the alternative was worse. The sun was merciless. My vision blurred, shadows bent at the edges. Just when I thought I'd collapse, I saw dust rising ahead. A vehicle was coming. Panic surged. What if it was Earl again? I ducked behind a low embankment, watching. The vehicle slowed. White paint, a light bar, a state trooper SUV. I stumbled out, waving both arms. "Help! Please help!" The trooper hit the brakes. door flying open. A tall man in mirrored sunglasses ran toward me, hand on his holster. "Ma'am, are you hurt? What happened?" Words tumbled out. Car broke down. Trucker named Earl. CB radio. Personal details. Organized something. My voice cracked with desperation. He helped me into the back of his SUV, blasting the AC. My body shook so violently I could barely hold the water bottle he handed me. Later, at the station under fluorescent lights, I gave my statement. They told me they'd searched Earl's rig. Inside, they found zip ties, chloroform, a burner phone filled with coded notes, CB logs with descriptions of women, times, mile markers. My own description was at the top of the list. One officer muttered something about 3 disappearances in the last year, all off this stretch. My stomach clenched. I signed papers with a trembling hand, unable to hold the pen steady. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Earl's face reflected in that side mirror, the sly smile, the CB mic in his hand. Even now, weeks later, I wake at night hearing phantom static, convinced I'll hear my own description whispered back to me. If my car had broken down just a few miles further, if that trooper hadn't happened along, I wouldn't be writing this. I'd be another name in a logbook, another ghost at mile marker 47. I've driven plenty of backroads before. Growing up in Kentucky, fog was nothing new to me. Thick enough sometimes that you couldn't see 10 feet ahead. But this was different. This fog felt alive, swallowing the highway like a living thing, smothering the trees and power lines until the world shrank to a gray tunnel lit only by my headlights. My wife, Grace, shifted in the passenger seat. "Are you sure we're still on 219? I squinted at the GPS. The little blue arrow spun in slow circles, searching for signal. "Yeah," I muttered, though I wasn't sure. We were supposed to be headed toward a small bed and breakfast outside of Asheville. A quick weekend trip. Just a change of scenery before the grind of another school year. But somewhere along the line, we'd taken a wrong turn. When the fog finally broke enough for us to see, a sign loomed up from the side of the road. "Welcome to Blackwood. Founded 1872. Grace frowned. I've never heard of this place. Neither had I. The road curved down into a valley where the fog thinned, revealing the town. At first glance, it seemed ordinary. 2 blocks of storefronts, a diner, a little courthouse with a clock tower. But the longer I looked, the stranger it seemed. Some of the buildings looked frozen in the 1950s. Neon ice cream signs, a barber shop with striped poles. Others belonged in the 70s, all wood paneling and avocado paint. A few were even older, the kind of wood plank general stores you only see in history books. It was like someone had grabbed random decades and mashed them together. I slowed, uneasy. "This is weird." Grace was already pointing. "Look, people." They walked the sidewalks in clusters. A woman in a polka dot dress, hair pinned in a 40s style. A man in bell-bottoms and sideburns. Kids in overalls straight out of a Depression-era photo. They looked at us as we rolled past, their faces unreadable in the fading light. My stomach tightened. We reached the far end of town, and that's when the car died. No warning, no sputter. The dashboard lights blinked out. The wheel stiffened in my hands. I coasted to the curb in front of a hardware store that smelled faintly of oil and old wood. "You've got to be kidding me," I muttered. Grace touched my arm. "Maybe they've got a mechanic." Reluctantly, I nodded. The locals approached slowly, curious but polite. An older man in suspenders tapped the hood. "Car trouble." "Yeah," I said. "It just cut off." He smiled thinly. "Blackwood'll take care of you. Don't you worry." Another woman stepped forward, carrying a basket of bread wrapped in a towel. "You must be hungry. Come sit. We'll feed you." Grace started to thank her, but something in the woman's eyes made me hesitate. Too still, too fixed, like she'd practiced that smile in a mirror and never quite got it right. We followed anyway, because what else could we do? The diner was warm, glowing with yellow bulbs. Inside, the decor was a jumble. Chrome stools, floral wallpaper, a jukebox, shelves of canned goods. A man in a brown suit poured us coffee, so strong it smelled burned. The bread was heavy and stale, like it had been baked decades ago. Grace tried to make conversation. "So what do you all do here?" The man in the suit smiled. "We keep to ourselves. Blackwood takes care of us." They all said it the same way. Blackwood takes care of us. As we ate, I noticed the clock on the wall. The second hand ticked backward. No one seemed to notice. I excused myself to the restroom, but instead of going there, I paused in the hallway near the kitchen. That's when I heard them. 2 more, a man's voice whispered. They'll do well. Best not waste them like the last ones, another voice answered. Blackwood provides, but only if we keep feeding it. I froze, heart hammering. A third voice hissed, keep your voice down. They'll hear. I stumbled back to the table, face pale. Grace caught my look and immediately understood something was wrong. We should get some air, I said too loudly. Thank you for the food. The woman with the bread smiled. Of course. Stay as long as you need. Blackwood will keep you. That phrase again. Blackwood will keep you. Outside, the fog was curling back into town, rolling down the street like a tide. The car sat dead, hood cold. I tried the ignition, nothing. Not even a click. Grace's voice trembled. Fletcher, what did you hear? They're not helping us. We need to leave. Now. We headed for the woods at the edge of town, staying low, praying no one saw. Branches snagged at our clothes, but we pushed deeper, following the faint sound of crickets and the far-off hum of traffic. Behind us, faint voices drifted through the fog. Don't let them go. Not yet. We ran. My lungs burned, my legs screaming, but the fear kept me moving. At one point, Grace tripped and I yanked her up, refusing to let go. Somewhere ahead, a dog barked, then another. Were they hunting us? Finally, the trees thinned. A sliver of asphalt gleamed under moonlight. The highway. We stumbled out, gasping. Our car sat on the shoulder exactly where it had died, but when I tried the key, the engine roared to life instantly. No warning lights, no problem. Grace sobbed. Go, just go. I drove until sunrise, refusing to stop until we hit a familiar interstate. Later, I searched for Blackwood. No record. No map references. Not in county histories. Not in ghost forums. Not even in old newspapers. And yet, sometimes when fog creeps low on the road, I swear I see that sign again in the distance. Welcome to Blackwood. Founded 1872. And I hear their voices. Blackwood will keep you. Blackwood will keep you. When you run away, you start to notice how much of the country is just empty. People talk about cities, towns, even small towns, but what fills the space between them? Hours of asphalt, scrub brush, silence. The kind of silence that makes you start to hear your own blood. I'd been on the road 2 weeks by then, driving a beat-up Corolla that was 1 step above scrap. I didn't have a plan, not really. Just head west, keep moving, don't let myself look back. The desert was supposed to mean freedom. Instead, it felt like punishment. Around midnight, somewhere between Reno and nowhere, the car shuddered. The temperature gauge jumped red, steam hissing from under the hood. I coasted to the shoulder, cursing as I killed the engine. When I popped the hood, hot air slapped me in the face. The radiator was cooked. No cars passed. No lights anywhere. My phone showed searching for signal until the screen dimmed. I walked. The desert night swallowed me. The moon was thin, barely enough to show where the road cut through nothing. My sneakers crunched gravel. I kept telling myself I'd hit a gas station eventually. Instead, the horizon glowed pink. Not sunrise. Neon. It pulsed in the distance, flickering like a heartbeat. Too steady to be a mirage, too strange to be real. My legs carried me toward it long before my brain caught up. The source was a diner. It sat alone in the sand like it had been dropped from the sky. Chrome siding, rounded corners, big glass windows glowing with fluorescent light. Above the door, a neon sign buzzed in cursive script. Desert Rose. My stomach twisted with relief and suspicion all at once. Who would build a diner in the middle of nowhere with nothing for miles? But the smell of coffee drifted through the cracked door, and my body chose relief. The bell jingled as I stepped inside. The place was spotless. Checkerboard floor, red booths, shiny napkin dispensers lined like soldiers. A jukebox in the corner played a warped tune, stuck on the same few bars before it restarted. And the waitress was already waiting. "Evenin', Kase," she said, smiling like we were old friends. My heart stumbled. Nobody here should know my name. "Do I know you?" I asked. Her smile didn't change. "Coffee." Before I could answer, she poured a cup and set it in front of me. I slid into a booth because doing anything else felt impossible. The coffee smelled like burnt plastic. but I wrapped my hands around the cup anyway just to ground myself. The customers barely noticed me. A trucker in the corner stared at his mug. A woman in a polka-dot dress nudged cold peas around her plate. Two teenage boys whispered the same words back and forth, like a tape loop. I kept glancing at the waitress. "How did you know my name?" She tilted her head, like she hadn't heard me. "You've come a long way. We've been waiting." I tried to laugh, but it sounded hollow. Waiting for what? She didn't answer, just tucked her order pad back in her apron and disappeared through the kitchen door. That was when I noticed the clock above the counter. Its second hand ticked backward. No one reacted. I should have left right then, but the desert outside pressed at my memory. Endless dark, no signal, no help. At least in here there was light. Food. People. So I stayed. The jukebox skipped again, same 3 notes. The woman's fork scraped the plate in the same circle. The trucker sipped, set the mug down, lifted it again. Exactly the same motion, like a machine repeating code. A chill crawled up my spine. Through the thin kitchen wall, I heard the waitress's voice. Clear. Meant to be private. "He's here now. Brown hair. Gray jacket. 6 feet. Just like you said. He looks tired. I'll keep him until you arrive." The mug slipped in my hands, coffee splashing across the table. My pulse slammed in my ears. She was talking about me. I slid from the booth, moving slow, praying the others wouldn't notice. But the trucker lifted his mug, paused mid-motion, and turned his head. The woman set down her fork and looked straight at me. They rose in perfect unison. Stiff. Too smooth, like marionettes on invisible strings. "Don't go," the boys whispered together, voices overlapping into a hollow echo. The kitchen door swung open. The waitress stepped out, still smiling. "You'll be happier if you stay." I bolted. The bell screamed above me as I shoved through the door. My sneakers hit sand, lungs burning. Behind me, the sound of chairs scraping the floor multiplied, a dozen feet moving in lockstep. The neon glow lit the ground around me, chasing my shadow. My chest ached, but fear kept me moving. I cut across the sand, away from the road, away from the impossible diner. The sound followed, footsteps pounding, voices chanting fragments of words I couldn't understand. I risked one glance back. Shapes moved outside the diner, spilling into the desert. Their motions were wrong. Too uniform, too precise, but they were fast. I pushed harder, brush tearing at my legs, lungs shredding. The pink glow dimmed, then flared, then dimmed again as if the diner itself was trying to reel me back. Finally, I saw faint headlights on a real road. I stumbled onto asphalt just as a semi rounded the bend. The driver braked, horn blaring. "You all right, kid?" he shouted, leaning out. I nodded too fast, climbing into the cab. My throat was raw. My hands shook so badly, I nearly dropped the bottle of water he offered. When I looked back, there was only desert. No neon, no chrome, no building at all. The next afternoon, we drove that same stretch in daylight. Miles of nothing. Sand, brush, road. No diner, no sign. Since then, I've searched. Google Maps, county records, local forums. No desert rose. Nothing but a few mentions of phantom diners in trucker legends. But I know what I saw. I know the smell of that coffee, the skip of the jukebox, the exact way the waitress said my name. And some nights, when the highway is dark and the radio static hums, I swear I catch a faint pink flicker on the horizon. Waiting. Always waiting. I've worked enough night shifts as a nurse to know the particular way fatigue sets in, like lead in the bones. That night, on a back road in rural West Virginia, it was worse. The snowstorm was so heavy it felt like we were sinking into another world. The wipers could barely keep up. Each sweep left streaks of ice. My husband gripped the wheel tight, leaning forward as if his body weight could make the headlights stronger. The kids were in the back seat, curled up under blankets, their voices small whenever they asked, "Are we almost there?" We weren't. The GPS lost signal miles ago. The last highway exit promised a town within 10 miles, but 10 had stretched into 20, then 30. Now it was nothing but trees bent under snow and a narrow ribbon of road buried fast. Then the Corolla coughed. Once, twice, then the engine sputtered out. The dash lights dimmed, heat faded, and the car rolled to silence. "Not now," my husband muttered, banging the wheel. The kids stirred, voices quivering. I tried to soothe them, though my throat felt tight. In storms like this, cars vanish under snow in hours. That was when I spotted it. Through the white curtain, a glow. Faint, golden, pulsing like a lantern. There, I whispered, pointing. We bundled the kids, pushed open the door, and stepped into a wall of snow. It stung our faces, clung to our lashes. We half-carried, half-dragged the children, trudging toward that fragile light. It grew clearer, a 2-story farmhouse, porch light burning, chimney puffing smoke. The windows glowed with firelight, warm and steady, like a painting of comfort. It looked like salvation. The porch creaked under our boots. I knocked. No answer. Knocked harder. Still nothing. The door, when I tried it, swung open. Warmth hit us instantly. The fire in the hearth blazed. The kitchen table was set for 2, plates clean, cutlery neatly arranged. A loaf of bread sat on the counter, sliced in half. Someone lived here. Someone had just stepped away. We called out, "Hello? We're stranded. Our car broke down." Only the wind held back. The kids, exhausted, sank onto the couch under a quilt that smelled faintly of cedar. I scanned the living room, trying to steady my breath. That was when I saw the first picture frame. It showed a man and woman holding hands, standing in front of the same farmhouse. Except their faces had been cut out, leaving only headless shapes in Sunday clothes. Another frame showed a wedding photo, bride and groom, faceless. A Christmas picture, 2 blurred ovals where smiles should be. Every frame in the room was the same. Meticulous, careful cuts. No faces. Why would someone do this? I whispered. My husband shook his head. "Don't look at it. We just need to wait for the storm to pass." But I couldn't stop looking. The house felt alive, as if those missing eyes were still watching. We tried to convince ourselves it was fine. We made the kids cocoa from a tin in the cupboard, wrapped them in quilts. The storm battered the walls, but the fire gave the illusion of safety. For a moment, I almost believed it. Then came the sound. A low mechanical grinding, muffled but steady, from the barn. At first I thought it was the storm, but the rhythm was too precise. Metal on metal, chewing, straining. Then a sharp screech, like steel tearing through something softer. The kids froze. "What is that?" my son asked. "Just machinery," my husband said quickly. "Farm equipment." But his eyes betrayed him. The sound grew louder, closer, until it filled the house. And over it, faintly, the crunch of tires on snow. Headlights cut across the front windows. A truck rolled into the drive, big, old, its engine idling heavy. It pulled up until its grill nearly kissed the porch. The way it stopped, it wasn't random. It was blocking us in. Figures spilled from the truck. At least 4, maybe 5, moving slow through the snow, their outlines blurred by the storm. They circled the house with a patience that made my stomach drop. My husband whispered, "Upstairs." We crept to the second floor, clutching the kids. From the bedroom window, I saw them move around the barn. One figure lingered by the porch, just a shape behind the curtain of snow. The barn doors groaned open. The grinding swelled, deafening. The air seemed to vibrate with it. Then the front door creaked. Boots thudded on the floor below. More than one pair. They didn't call out, didn't announce themselves, just moved from room to room with calm certainty, as though they already knew we were there. My daughter whimpered. I pressed my hand to her mouth, whispering into her hair, "Quiet, baby, quiet." We couldn't wait. My husband forced the window, glass rattling in the frame. Snow gusted in. The drop below wasn't far, 6, maybe 7 feet into a drift. He lowered the kids first, pushing them into the soft mound. Then he climbed out, reaching for me. As I swung a leg over, the bedroom door downstairs slammed. Footsteps pounded the stairs. I dropped into the snow just as the footsteps reached the hall. We ran. The snow was waist deep, but terror gave us strength. My arms burned from dragging the children, my lungs screamed with the cold, but I didn't stop. Behind us, the figures spilled from the house, dark shapes against the glow. They didn't yell, didn't chase in a rush. They just followed, steady, certain, as if they knew the storm itself was on their side. The grinding in the barn rose higher, shrieking, rattling my teeth. For a moment, I swore I saw sparks bloom against the snow, red like blood in the whiteness. The road appeared ahead, barely visible under drifts. We stumbled onto it, collapsing. That was when headlights cut through the white. An orange snowplow. The driver leaned out, eyes wide. "What the hell are you doing out here?" We scrambled aboard, shaking too hard to answer. I only looked back once. The house stood glowing, smoke still curling from its chimney. Figures stood on the porch, silhouettes unmoving, watching us leave. By morning, when the police returned, the truck was gone. The barn was empty. The fire cold. Only the photographs remained, every face cut out. Later, I learned the Henderson couple, the ones who owned the house, had been reported missing weeks earlier. No trace found. I still dream about that grinding sound. Not just machinery, something wetter, heavier, chewing in the dark. When I wake, I pray it wasn't meant for us. When you're a broke grad student, you learn to cut corners wherever you can. That's how I ended up scrolling through Craigslist rideshare ads instead of booking a bus ticket home. My family lived 4 states away, and between tuition, rent, and groceries, Greyhound felt like a luxury. A post caught my eye. Driving through state Friday, room for 1 passenger, split gas. Experienced driver. Safe and reliable. Mark. It had a phone number. No picture. I hesitated. My parents had drilled into me never to meet strangers off the internet, but I told myself I was 27, not a kid. Besides, I texted him. He responded quickly, politely, confirming time and place. So that Friday, in the cold blue light of early morning, I met Mark in a grocery store parking lot. He looked ordinary. Mid-40s, short hair going gray, button-up shirt tucked into jeans. Not the type you'd think twice about. He smiled warmly, shook my hand, even offered to help with my bag. His car was clean, a dark SUV with air freshener swinging from the rearview mirror. "Zachariah, right?" he said. "Yeah. Thanks again for the ride." "No problem," he said. Long road ahead. The first hour passed easily. We talked about traffic, weather, where we grew up. He said he'd worked odd jobs most of his life, enjoyed the open road. His voice had that soft drawl that made him sound friendly. I almost relaxed. But then he said something that made me freeze. "So how's your sister doing? Emma, right? Sophomore year?" I hadn't told him I had a sister. Definitely hadn't told him her name or age. I forced a laugh. "Yeah, she's good." Inside, alarm bells went off. Maybe he saw something online. Facebook? But my settings were private. And how would he know her grade level? I turned to the window, watching the trees blur. Mark kept driving, humming along to the radio. "Your folks must be glad you're visiting. Small town like yours, not much changes, huh?" Another hit to my gut. I'd never told him my hometown. In fact, in the Craigslist ad I only mentioned my current city. I tightened my grip on my phone, glancing at the signal bars. 2 left. Not good. "You know," Mark said after a long silence, "you're smart to use Craigslist. People think it's unsafe, but really, it's a good way to meet trustworthy folks. Safer than buses. Less unpredictable." He emphasized that last word too much. I nodded mutely, pulse quickening. My eyes flicked to the doors. The locks were down. I hadn't noticed him press the button. I tried the handle discreetly. Deadlocked. Mark noticed. His smile widened, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Don't worry. Just safety first. Don't want any accidents on the highway." My throat was dry. I tried to sound casual. "Yeah, of course." I texted my mom under the dashboard. "All good. Love you." Really, it was a test, to see if I had signal. The little circle spun endlessly. No bars now. "Signal's patchy out here," Mark said, not even looking at my phone. "You won't get much until we're closer to the interstate." How did he know I was checking? The next town was still an hour away. My mind spun. If I panicked, he'd know. If I confronted him, I'd have no backup. I needed to outthink him. So I bluffed. "You know," I said, trying to sound bored, "my roommate loves tracking me on Find My Phone. Says it's like watching a video game." I told him not to, but he won't stop. He even set up alerts if I stop moving too long. Annoying, right? For the first time, Mark's expression faltered. Just a flicker. His fingers tightened on the wheel. "That's so?" he asked softly. "Yeah," I said, leaning back as if relaxed. "He's obsessed with it. Says if I ever go missing, he'll know within 5 minutes." The silence stretched. Only the hum of the tires on asphalt filled the car. My palms sweated. Then Mark forced a chuckle. Kids these days. Always connected. But he didn't look at me again. 20 minutes later, he slowed at a rest stop. "Bathroom break," he said lightly. "Want to stretch your legs?" Every nerve screamed at me to run. The second we stopped, I unbuckled, yanked the door handle. This time it opened. Cold air hit my face. I bolted across the lot, backpack slamming against my spine, feet pounding the cracked pavement. I didn't stop until I reached the fluorescent glow of the vending machines outside the restroom. Mark hadn't moved his SUV. He sat behind the wheel, hands gripping it tight, watching me. His smile was gone. Then, without a word, he pulled out of the lot and drove away. I stood shaking in the buzzing light until a trucker asked if I needed help. He let me call my parents, and later I arranged a bus ticket. Expensive or not, it felt like salvation. Weeks passed before the fear eased. I convinced myself maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe Mark was just weird and I overreacted. But months later, I saw a flyer at campus. Missing student. Last seen entering a vehicle arranged through Craigslist. Male driver. Mid-40s. The photo showed a girl I recognized from the library. She'd vanished. My stomach dropped. Mark hadn't been bluffing friendliness. He hadn't just been odd. He was hunting, and I had only escaped because of one desperate lie about being tracked. Now, whenever I see rideshare ads, my chest tightens. Somewhere out there, Mark is still driving, still posting, still smiling at strangers who just want a cheap ride home. And one day, someone won't make it to the rest stop. I grew up thinking North Dakota was only cold. The kind of place where winters bury cars in snowdrifts and the sky stays gray for months. But that summer proved me wrong. It was August, and the heat wave had turned the prairie into a griddle. By noon, the asphalt shimmered like water, and the air felt like opening an oven door. My younger brother, Elijah, rode shotgun. 19, all restless energy and too many jokes for the situation. "We're gonna meld out here," he said, fanning himself with an old map. Sweat slicked his forehead. The Corolla's AC had died miles back, and now the temperature gauge climbed too high. I prayed we'd make it to the next town, but the engine gave one last wheeze and died on a stretch of highway where nothing but endless fields stretched in every direction. "No, no, no," I muttered, slapping the steering wheel. We tried restarting it. Nothing. The sun blazed down. No shade, no cell signal. The nearest mile marker was so far back I couldn't see it anymore. Elijah climbed out, shielding his eyes. "What now?" I scanned the horizon. That was when I spotted it, a dark square against the shimmering distance. There, a house. We hauled our bags and started walking. Every step felt heavier, shoes crunching in dry grass, air thick enough to choke. My mouth was already sandpaper. The farmhouse looked abandoned at first glance. Paint peeled from its clapboard siding, and one shutter hung by a single hinge. But up close, the details were off. The porch boards were swept clean. A bottle of water sat on the railing, condensation still wet. Elijah raised his eyebrows. "Creepy or lucky?" "Both," I said. We stepped inside. The air was stifling, but cooler than outside. Dust coated most surfaces, yet on the kitchen table sat 3 plastic water bottles, 2 half empty, 1 full. Boot prints tracked across the floor. And from the next room, I heard static. A radio sat on a crate, its dial glowing faintly. A man's voice crackled through. "Next run tomorrow night." Same route. I froze. Elijah mouthed, "What the hell?" Before I could answer, engines rumbled outside. Heavy. Close. Through the window, 2 trucks pulled up, kicking dust. 4 men jumped out, armed, rifles slung, pistols on hips. They moved with the casual alertness of people used to carrying weapons, scanning the horizon before striding toward the house. My chest went cold. Upstairs, Elijah whispered. "No," I hissed, grabbing his arm. "They'll search it." Silo. Behind the house loomed a rusted grain silo, its door hanging crooked. We sprinted low, heat slamming into us like a hammer. Inside, the air was suffocating, grain dust sticking to our sweat. I pulled the door just enough to leave a crack. The men entered the farmhouse. Muffled voices carried through the heat. "Check the rooms. Grab the rest of the supplies." Then the radio buzzed louder. 2 kids stranded by marker 63 this morning. Tires blown clean through. Already taken care of. Elijah's eyes widened. Tires blown. My stomach dropped. Our flat, our sudden breakdown, it hadn't been bad luck. It had been planned. Another voice answered, clearer. "Dispose of travelers before moving the cargo. No evidence." The words felt like ice water down my spine. We crouched in silence, every breath a thunderclap in my ears. The grinding heat inside the silo made me dizzy, but fear kept me sharp. Footsteps crunched outside. One of the men circled close. Through the crack, I saw him pause, scanning the yard. His rifle glinted. He spit into the dirt, then walked back toward the barn. We stayed crouched until dusk. The men loaded crates into the trucks, laughing like it was just another day's work. Eventually, the engines roared to life, and dust plumes swallowed them. Only when silence returned did I let out the breath I'd been holding. "We have to move," I whispered. We cut across the fields, sticking low. The heat had softened, but the air still shimmered. My legs shook with exhaustion, and Elijah stumbled more than once, but we kept going. Behind us, the silo shrank to a speck. Then came a shout. Figures on the horizon, running. They'd seen us. "Go!" I screamed, dragging Elijah's arm. We sprinted through waist-high grass, hearts hammering. A gunshot cracked, dirt spraying near my foot. Another whistled past my ear. We didn't look back. The tree line ahead shimmered like a mirage. We threw ourselves into its shadow just as headlights appeared on the road. A state trooper's cruiser crawling along, lights flashing faintly. I burst onto the pavement, waving frantically. The officer slammed the brakes, leapt out, and shouted, "Hands up!" until he saw our faces, streaked with dirt and tears. We spilled out the story in gasps. He radioed back up. But when they reached the farmhouse an hour later, it was empty. Trucks gone. Radio gone. No boot prints. No water bottles. Nothing but an abandoned shell. The officer frowned, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. Elijah grabbed my hand hard enough to hurt. He whispered, "They'll do it again, won't they?" I didn't answer. Because even now, when I think of the prairie at dusk, I hear that radio voice. Dispose of travelers before moving the cargo. And I know the next heat wave will leave more cars stranded. I've been driving trucks since before my beard went gray. Seen every kind of weather this country can throw at you. Tornado skies in Oklahoma, summer hail in Colorado, fog so thick in Pennsylvania you could barely see your hood ornament. But the one that still makes my chest tighten is the mountain blizzard. Utah's high desert can fool you. In daylight, those roads look endless and clean. Come night, with snow blowing sideways, you realize how small you are. Nothing but wind, white, and the sound of your own tires humming along a road you can barely feel. That night, the storm came fast. One minute, I was watching stars blink over the ridges. The next, I was in a tunnel of snow. The CB had been dead for hours. No chatter, no weather reports. It was like I'd slipped off the map. I tightened my hands on the wheel, heat blasting, radio down low. I told myself to keep calm, follow the faint shadow of the center line. No stopping. Stopping was death. And then I saw him, a figure on the shoulder, walking against the wind. I thought my eyes were tricking me at first, but as I got closer, the shape sharpened. A man. No coat, no hat, just a thin button-up shirt flapping against his frame, jeans stiff with ice. Every instinct screamed, "Don't stop." You don't pick up strangers at night, not in a storm, not on a run like this. But 25 years on the road does something to your conscience. I'd buried too many stories of folks freezing in their cars because no one stopped. I slowed, hazards blinking, and leaned across the cab to push the passenger door open. "Get in before you turn into a popsicle," I shouted. He climbed up without hesitation, boots leaving no snow on the steps. Sat down, buckled the belt in one smooth motion. His face was pale but calm, hair dark and wet. He didn't even look windburned. "Appreciate it," he said. Voice flat, steady. I pulled back onto the road. For a while, silence filled the cab. Just the roar of the heater and the scrape of wipers. I figured he was in shock, so I tried to start simple. "Where you headed?" "East," he said. "East where?" "Just east." Not much of an answer. I studied him in the dash light. No shiver. No clenched jaw. He sat like the cold didn't touch him. We rolled another mile. Snow thickened. Then he spoke again. "You know how many people vanish on this highway?" The way he said it made me grip the wheel tighter. "Plenty of wrecks," I offered. "Not wrecks," he said. "Disappearances." I glanced at him. His face was turned toward the window, voice low but clear. "Mile marker 212. Family of 3, 2003. Car broke down in a storm. Never seen again. Mile marker 189. Young woman, 2011. Took a rideshare. Vanished. Mile marker 174. Trucker named Delaney, 2017. Parked to chain up tires. Gone by morning. My blood ran cold. I knew those names. Delaney especially. I'd shaken his hand at a way station years back. His missing poster had been pinned in Cheyenne's truck stop for months. How do you know all that? I asked carefully. He turned his head slowly. His eyes reflected the dash glow. Pale, flat, too calm. Someone has to remember. I forced a laugh. Too sharp. You a cop or something? He didn't answer. Just folded his hands neatly in his lap. That's when I noticed the IDs. A stack of driver's licenses, corners worn, poking out of his shirt pocket. I caught glimpses of faces. A young woman smiling. A man in a ball cap. A teenager with braces. None of them his. My throat went dry. I kept my voice even. You, got family waiting for you. Yes, he said. After a pause. Don't you? I nodded quickly. 2 daughters. Grandbaby on the way. My voice cracked, so I pushed a chuckle. They keep me rolling, you know? Gives me reason not to quit. He studied me a moment too long. Then, faintly, he smiled. Family keeps you warm, he said softly. That's good. The storm swallowed the road. We drove in silence for miles. My pulse hammered, but I forced myself to keep talking. Stories about cookouts, about truck stop meals, about the grandkid I hadn't met yet. He listened, eyes forward, hands still. At last, light bloomed through the snow. A truck stopped, glowing like a beacon. We'll stop here, I said, forcing calm. I pulled into the lot, snow crunching. Killed the engine. Turned to the passenger seat. Empty. Seat belt buckled. Door closed. No footprints outside. My breath fogged the cab. I sat frozen, hands gripping the wheels so tight they hurt. I stumbled inside the diner, boots heavy with snow. The waitress poured me coffee without asking. You look like you've seen a ghost, she said. Something like that, I muttered. Later, I asked the security guard to pull footage. He showed me the feed, my rig pulling in, me gesturing, lips moving. No passenger, just me, talking to empty air. I staggered back to my truck. On the seat lay a single license. Not mine. A woman's face smiled from the photo, her eyes bright. Expired years ago. I still keep it, locked in my glove box. Proof, or maybe a curse. And every winter, when the snow starts falling and the CB goes silent, I see him again in my mind, walking calm through the storm, waiting for another driver to slow down. Spring break was supposed to be easy. Music, gas station snacks, dumb car games, and a rented cabin up in the Tennessee mountains. No boys, no drama. Just me, Tasha, Leah, and Izzy. For best friends from college packed into Tasha's CRV like we had nothing to worry about. And honestly, we didn't. Until rural Georgia. We were cutting through the state via back roads, avoiding the usual I-75 traffic. Around 4:30 in the afternoon, the sun was still up, but the heat was oppressive. We'd been driving for hours and needed food, a bathroom, and somewhere to stretch. When we saw a weather-worn sign that said, Hogback Bar and Grill, food, drinks, air conditioning, we pulled in without thinking. It looked like every roadside dive bar you've ever seen in a horror movie. Rusted tin roof, uneven gravel parking lot, old neon beer signs in the windows. But the lot had a few trucks out front, and there was music playing inside. It didn't feel unsafe yet. Inside, it was dark and cold, the kind of cold that feels like it comes from an old walk-in freezer. A few men sat at the bar, watching a muted TV overhead. 2 tables were occupied. The bartender, a heavy-set man in his 50s, nodded as we walked in. Take a seat anywhere, he said. We picked a booth near the window. A waitress came over, maybe late 30s, too much makeup, smiling a little too hard. You girls just passing through? Yeah, I said. Spring break trip. Fun, she replied flatly, then handed us menus. You'll want to try the house cocktails. Real popular with travelers. Tasha ordered a beer. Izzy went for the house special, some watermelon vodka thing. Leah got iced tea. I just asked for water. Something about the place made me want to stay clear-headed. The food took forever. We sat there chatting, checking our phones, no signal, and joking about who was most likely to get us lost in the woods. But about 20 minutes after the drinks arrived, Izzy started slurring. At first it was subtle. Her sentences drifted, her eyes glazed. Then she dropped her fork. Sorry. she said, blinking like she was drunk. I feel weird. Tasha, mid-laugh, suddenly froze. Her hands trembled. Guys, she whispered. I only had one beer. Panic bloomed in my chest. I turned to the waitress, who was watching us from behind the bar. Just staring, not moving. We need to check, I said loudly. She smiled like it was all very funny. Leaving already? I grabbed my purse. Now. We all stood. Leah helped Izzy up. Her legs buckled. Tasha leaned against the booth. The men at the bar turned to look. One of them stood and stepped outside. I put my arm around Izzy and pushed toward the door. The second we stepped outside, the heat slammed us in the face, and the man who'd left earlier was standing beside our car. Just standing. Leah whispered, "Why is he by our car?" "I don't know." He didn't say anything, just lit a cigarette, eyes on us. We helped Izzy into the back seat, then Tasha. I got in and locked the doors before the guy could come closer. He watched us drive off, slowly flicking ash onto the gravel. Back on the road, the silence was thick. The AC blew warm air. I tried to call 911, but no signal. Izzy moaned in the back, mumbling nonsense. Tasha kept nodding off. We hit a patch of road with one bar of service. I pulled over long enough to call. 911, what's your emergency? I gave our location as best I could. We think my friends were drugged. At a bar, hogback something. There was a guy outside. We're scared they're following us. The dispatcher stayed calm. Find a public place. Get somewhere with people. I've dispatched a unit near that area. As soon as we hung up, Leah shouted from the back. Guys, look at Izzy's phone. She held it up. Dozens of missed calls. All from the same number. Unsaved. Unknown. No voicemail. Just repeated calls every few minutes since we'd left the bar. And in the location settings? Live location sharing on. The screen said, last shared with. Unknown contact. 27 minutes ago. What the hell? I breathed. She didn't do that. We hadn't let anyone hold our phones, except when the waitress offered to take a group photo. She'd laughed, fiddled with the screen, then snapped a blurry pic. I floored it. 15 minutes later, we found a gas station off a bigger highway with a sheriff's cruiser already waiting. The officer took one look at Izzy and Tasha and called for EMTs. At the hospital, blood tests confirmed what we already knew. Both had been slipped something. Not enough to knock them out, but enough to mess them up slowly. Enough to make sure they couldn't drive. We gave our statements. Descriptions. The bartender. The waitress. The man by the car. But by the time authorities arrived back at Hogback, the bar was empty. Kitchen cold. Phones disconnected. No sign anyone had been there in hours. Later that night, a detective showed me Izzy's call log. You're lucky, he said. Another girl wasn't. Same stretch of road, different bar, 3 weeks ago. Her phone went dead halfway through her route. Never found. I stared at the screen. The number had stopped calling as soon as we hit 911. They were watching, waiting for us to stop again. We escaped because we panicked early, because Leah noticed the calls, because I got us moving. But even now, months later, I sometimes wake up and check my phone for missed calls. I'll never forget the way that man stood by our car. Like he'd done it before. Like he was waiting for the next time a group of girls came through town, just looking for a quick stop. I left Seattle on a Wednesday morning with everything in the trunk of my car and a life-changing interview waiting for me in Minneapolis. I'd prepped for weeks. This job could finally get me out of my dead-end marketing gig, give me a real shot at something bigger. I didn't tell many people I was leaving. I just drove east, feeling like I had momentum for the first time in years. Montana was never part of the plan. I was somewhere between Missoula and Helena when my check engine light blinked on. The temperature gauge spiked. Then the engine made a sound like a wrench rattling in a clothes dryer. I pulled off onto the shoulder, steam rising from under the hood. The highway was empty. No cell signal. I sat for 20 minutes before a rust-red pickup rolled up behind me. A middle-aged guy with a grizzled beard stepped out, hitching up worn jeans. Need a hand. I hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, just broke down. He introduced himself as Ron, a mechanic from a town just up the road. Said his shop had a tow truck, and he could bring me in and take a look, cheap and quick. I didn't have many options. The town was called White Hollow. One blinking light, a gas station, a bar, a diner, a town hall that also served as the post office. It felt like stepping into a time capsule. Ron's garage was right off Main Street. A converted barn with rusted license plates nailed to the walls. He backed the tow truck into a bay and said, "Might take a day or two, but we'll get you fixed up." "No rentals around?" I asked. Ron chuckled. "Nope. Closest car lot's an hour east. But there's an inn just across the street. You'll be comfortable." The White Hollow Inn was quaint. A woman named Dottie ran the place. Late 50s, cheerful, eyes just a little too sharp. She gave me a room and a muffin like I was an old friend coming home. "Stranded, huh?" she asked. "Yeah, car trouble." She smiled. "That's how most of us got here." At the time, I thought she meant it as a joke. The next day, Ron told me he was waiting on a part. He said it would arrive by morning. Meanwhile, I wondered. The diner served the same menu taped to the counter: meatloaf, grilled cheese, chicken fried steak. The waitress, a tall woman named Amber, asked where I was from, then added, "Don't worry, you'll get used to it here." "Used to what?" "Being stuck," she said, grinning too wide. Later, I stopped by the grocery store. I asked the clerk, a man about my age named Tyler, how long he'd lived here. "Since college. Broke down here on a trip to Glacier. Never left." He didn't laugh when he said it. I pressed, "You didn't want to leave?" His smile faltered. "It's not that easy. You'll see." By day 3, I was suspicious. I walked back to the garage. My car sat on the lift, hood up, engine pulled apart like an autopsy in progress. "Almost there," Ron said. "Just one more part." "What exactly broke?" I asked. He rubbed his jaw. "Cooling system. Cracked housing. Damaged belt. Maybe a busted sensor. You know how these newer cars are." I don't know much about engines, but even I could tell he was being vague. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something about the whole place felt staged. Like everyone was acting in a play they'd rehearsed 100 times. So I broke into town hall. Not the smartest move, but I needed answers. The building was locked, but a side window opened easily. In the clerk's office, I found what I was looking for: vehicle logs, repair orders, titles, DMV registration transfers. Dozens, all for out-of-state plates. Most never re-registered. Others were abandoned, sold for parts, or scrapped. I recognized some names from around town. Tyler, Mazda, 2013. Transfer date, 2017. Amber, Honda, 2009. Transfer, 2015. Dottie, Chrysler, 2004. Transfer, 2008. My name wasn't in there yet, but there was a blank file waiting at the bottom of the pile. That was the final nail. I walked back to the garage at 2 a.m. My car was still on the lift, the hood open, but something was wrong. My engine wiring had been cleanly cut in 3 places. This wasn't a breakdown. This was sabotage. I packed what I could into a backpack, filled my water bottle, and left on foot before dawn. No flashlight, just moonlight and adrenaline. I took side roads through farmland, then cut across fields. I didn't know where I was headed, just away. Behind me, in the darkness, I swore I saw headlights. I ducked into a dry creek bed and waited for nearly an hour. Nothing. Silence. Just the wind rustling tall grass and the sound of my own breath. When the sun finally rose, I found a county road and stuck out my thumb. The first 3 cars sped past. The 4th stopped, an older woman in a Subaru, who looked confused when I told her where I'd come from. "White Hollow," she repeated. "Can't say I've heard of it." I didn't argue. I made it to Helena, borrowed a phone at a gas station, and called a friend to wire me money. I never made it to Minneapolis. Never got the interview. I tried to report the town, the garage, the people, but the sheriff just squinted and said he'd look into it. I never heard back. A week later, I got a voicemail. Blocked number. Could have used someone like you here, Garrett. Smart guy. Shame you didn't stay. Most folks don't get that far. I deleted it, but I haven't stopped looking over my shoulder since. I don't drive back roads anymore. I don't stop in towns not on maps. And I never, ever trust a mechanic who says, "It'll just take a day." They say the desert messes with your mind. I used to think that meant heat stroke, mirages, the kind of loopy thoughts that hit after too much sun and too little water. But it turns out, there's another kind of madness waiting out there, one with headlights. It was supposed to be a straight shot. Me and my best friend Damien, hauling ass from Riverside to Reno for a weekend of beer, gambling, and blackout-level bad decisions. We left after sunset to avoid traffic, stocked up on Red Bulls and gas station jerky. It felt like freedom, like something out of a college movie. By the time we hit the Nevada border, the road had gone dark. Not just unlit, I mean dark. No other cars. No signs. No cell service. Just endless blacktop unraveling in front of us like a thread into the void. That's when the lights appeared in the mirror. Two high beams. Far back at first. Then closer. Then too close. Dude, Damien said, leaning forward in the passenger seat. What's this guy doing? I dunno, I muttered. I nudged the steering wheel a little, tapping the brakes. He's tailgating. But the truck didn't pass. Just hovered there. Maybe 10 feet behind us, glaring bright. Then he flashed his brights twice. A signal? A warning? I pulled into the right lane to let him by. He didn't pass. I slowed down a bit more. The truck stayed right on us. That's not normal, Damien said. He's messing with us. We hit a stretch of cracked asphalt with no shoulder and nowhere to pull over. The black pickup finally pulled into the left lane. We both exhaled, but instead of passing, it stayed even with us. The cab was tinted. We couldn't see the driver. Then he matched our speed exactly. 60 miles an hour. Still even. Still silent. Still staring. What the hell? I whispered. Then he veered sharply toward us. Not hitting us, just jerking the wheel like he wanted to fake us out. I swerved reflexively, tires screeching. Damien cursed. We nearly clipped the guardrail. Then the truck dropped back, fell behind us again, and disappeared. No lights. No taillights. Nothing. For 10 miles, it was just us again. I checked the rear view constantly. Damien kept scanning the side mirror. Every time I blinked, I imagined those high beams behind me again. Then we saw them. Suddenly, the black pickup roared out from behind a roadside sign and got back on our tail, this time flashing a spotlight, a damn spotlight, right into my side mirror. I couldn't see a thing. Get us out of here, Damien yelled. I slammed the gas. The speedometer crept past 85. The pickup stayed right behind us, swinging side to side like it was hurting us. Then it forced us off the main road entirely, toward a dirt service road that wasn't on the GPS. I didn't want to take it. I didn't want to go dark. But the spotlight blinded me, and the highway had narrowed. I made the turn. Instant regret. The dirt road dipped into a dry wash lined with rocks and scraggly brush. Our tires kicked up so much dust we could barely see the turn behind us. I kept driving, heart pounding, trying to find a loop or turnout. The truck didn't follow immediately. I think we lost him, Damien said, looking behind us. That's when the engine lights came back on. Every single one. Oil, battery, traction, everything. Then the dash flickered. No. The engine sputtered but didn't die. We kept moving. We need signal, I said. There's gotta be. I stopped. Around the next bend was a clearing. Old fencing. Broken equipment. An RV shell with its windows smashed out. That's when I saw them. Tire marks. Lots of them. Some recent. Some half buried under dust. And gouges in the dirt. Like skid marks. Like someone had been pushed. We weren't the first. That's when the pickup appeared again. No lights. Silent. Just sitting at the mouth of the trail behind us like a predator waiting. Then it moved forward slowly, taunting us. He's not trying to kill us, Damien said suddenly. He's trying to scare us into killing ourselves. I didn't respond. My mouth was too dry. I fumbled for my phone. No bars. Damien tried his. Nothing. I gunned it. The road twisted, and we fishtailed around a patch of loose gravel. I saw a light blink on in the distance. Cell tower? A station? We angled toward it. At the next rise, I got one bar. Emergency calls only. I hit 911. The call connected. Barely. 911. What is your emergency? I spoke fast, trying not to sob. We're being chased. Black pickup. Off Route 95. Dirt road. No plates. No lights. He's trying to kill us. Stay on the line, the dispatcher said. Units en route. Stay visible. Do not leave the vehicle. I didn't answer. The road curved again, and the pickup rammed us. Just once. Hard. Enough to send us sliding sideways. I kept control, barely. I screamed. Damien grabbed the dash. Don't stop, he said. No matter what. Ahead, I saw a fence line. A break in it. And then, flashing red and blue lights. The pickup braked. Hard. Then reversed into the dark. Dust swallowed it. 2 state troopers reached us seconds later. The troopers checked us for injuries and made us sit on the tailgate of their SUV while paramedics checked our vitals. Neither of us spoke. We just stared at the dirt road, waiting for those headlights to come back. They never did. One trooper, a woman named Carson, took my statement. She'd heard of something similar, a few phantom driver calls in the past year, mostly chalked up to drunk locals or mistaken identity. But I could tell she didn't believe that. Later, at the station, they showed us photos. Blurry dashcam stills. A black pickup, no plates, aftermarket grille, spotlights mounted under the mirrors. Same truck, different towns. In one photo, a sedan lay upside down in a ravine. Driver swerved off the road at 80, Carson said. Killed instantly. No sign of another vehicle. No brake marks. No witnesses. Damien leaned back in his chair, pale. He wants it to look like accidents. Like people panicked. Carson nodded. He plays chicken. Gets in your head. Makes you do the work. A week later, a YouTube video surfaced. Dashcam footage from a couple in Utah. Same truck. Same tactics. It ends when the couple pulls over, screaming. The video cuts to static. They were found dead 4 days later. Rolled car. Broken necks. No signs of foul play. It's been 6 months since that night. I haven't driven a highway since. Not alone. I see that truck in every shadow on the road. Every time I check my mirrors and see a black grille, my heart stops. I check my rear cam obsessively. The trooper said he wouldn't stop. That men like him don't. They just move to another road, another state. Always watching. Always waiting for someone too tired, too isolated, too unprepared. I survived. Barely. And I don't think that was the point. The game was never about killing. It was about breaking you first. I didn't know how many more chances I'd get with my mom. That's why I agreed to the road trip in the first place. She'd been diagnosed with early onset dementia 2 years ago, and every month I could feel her slipping further away. Some days she was herself, sharp, witty, quick to point out when my hair looked like a crow's nest. Other days, she'd lose her keys 3 times in an hour or forget what city she was in. I thought maybe if we got out on the road, retracing some of the vacations we'd taken when I was a kid, it might shake loose a few good memories for her, or at least give us a final stretch of freedom before things got worse. We started in Atlanta, loaded my hatchback with snacks and a small cooler, and headed north toward Tennessee. She kept humming along to the radio, tapping her fingers against her knee. For a while, it felt almost normal, like the disease hadn't stolen anything yet. It was on the second day that I first noticed the gray sedan. We'd pulled off at a gas station near Knoxville, and while Mom went inside to use the restroom, I filled the tank. I don't know why the car stood out. Maybe because it was spotless compared to the mud-splattered pickups around it. The driver was a man in his late 40s, clean-shaven, wearing aviator sunglasses even though the sky was overcast. He sat there idling, staring straight ahead. I glanced once, twice, then pushed it out of my mind. But a few hours later, when we stopped at a Cracker Barrel for lunch, there it was again. Same car, parked 3 rows over. The man wasn't inside the restaurant when we ate, but when we left, he was leaning against the hood of his car, pretending to scroll his phone. I told myself I was being paranoid. Highways are long, and travelers often end up in the same stops along the way. Still, something about it stuck in my chest like a splinter. That night, we checked into a budget motel outside Lexington. While I unloaded our bags, Mom lingered at the door, squinting into the parking lot. "Do you see him?" she whispered. "See who?" "That man. The one who was behind us all day. He looks familiar." Her memory was unreliable, so I brushed it off. "You probably just saw someone who reminds you of someone else." But when I followed her gaze, I froze. The gray sedan was parked 2 rows away, angled toward our room. The next morning, Mom was cheerful, sipping motel coffee like nothing had happened. I didn't want to spook her, so I kept quiet. We merged back onto the highway, but within an hour, my stomach dropped. There he was again, 2 cars behind us in the slow lane. Every time I sped up, he sped up. Every time I slowed down, he slowed down. I switched lanes 3 times in the span of 20 minutes. He matched every move. My palms were slick against the steering wheel. Mom noticed me fidgeting and asked, "What's wrong, honey?" "Nothing," I lied. "Just tired of driving." But I couldn't shake the thought. This wasn't coincidence anymore. At our next stop, a rest area near Cincinnati, I parked near the bathrooms and hustled Mom inside with me. I pretended to be calm, but my heart was hammering. When we came back out, the sedan was parked a few spaces down. The man leaned against the door, smoking a cigarette, watching us openly now. "Morning," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I gripped Mom's arm and steered her quickly to our car without answering. Once we pulled back onto the highway, she whispered, "I know him. I just can't remember from where." That chilled me worse than anything. By the third day, I was barely sleeping. I kept checking the peephole of our motel room, staring at the headlights that swept across the lot at night. Mom seemed oblivious, humming along with gospel stations or telling me half-remembered stories from my childhood. But I was falling apart inside. At a diner in Indiana, I finally saw him up close when he walked past our booth. He wasn't much taller than me, but he moved with the calm confidence of someone who knew exactly what he was doing. He looked directly at my mom, then at me, and gave a polite little nod as if we were neighbors passing on the sidewalk. That was the moment I decided I couldn't handle it alone. I excused myself to the bathroom, locked myself in a stall, and dialed 911. My voice shook as I explained what had been happening, that we were being followed across state lines, that the man wouldn't leave us alone. The dispatcher took me seriously, told me to stay where I was, and promised a trooper would meet us at the next exit. When I returned to the booth, Mom looked worried. "Are we leaving?" "Yeah," I said, grabbing her hand. "Right now." We got in the car, and I pulled out onto the road. Sure enough, the sedan followed. I felt a surge of panic when he drew closer, almost tailgating us. But 10 miles later, flashing lights appeared in the rear view. Relief crashed over me so hard I nearly cried. The patrol car slid in behind the sedan, sirens wailing. I slowed to pull onto the shoulder, watching in disbelief as the officer ordered the man out of his car. The arrest itself was strangely anticlimactic. The man raised his hands, smirking like this was just an inconvenience. But when the officer searched his trunk, my relief turned to nausea. Inside were half a dozen purses, wallets, prescription bottles with other people's names on them. A canvas duffel bag held hairbrushes, photographs, and jewelry, all belonging to elderly people who weren't there to claim them. Later, a detective explained that he was part of a ring. They followed older travelers, especially those with memory issues, waiting for the caregiver to slip up. A distracted stop for gas. A late-night walk to the vending machine. That was when they struck. Some of the items in his trunk were linked to missing persons cases stretching back years. When they told me, my skin prickled with cold. Because if I hadn't trusted my gut, Mom and I might have been next. That night, after giving statements at the station, I sat with Mom in a safer hotel arranged by the police. She looked at me with wide, confused eyes. "Why did they take him away?" she asked softly. "Because he's dangerous," I said. "But I swear I've seen him before," she murmured, touching her temple like she could drag the memory out. "Like in a store, or maybe on the news." I kissed her forehead and told her not to worry. But the truth is, I don't know if she recognized him from real life or from some darker corner of her fading memories. Either way, I'll never forget the way he smiled when they pulled him from the car, as if we were just another job he hadn't finished yet. And I'll never again assume paranoia means I'm imagining things. Sometimes, the nightmare on the road isn't in your head. It's in the car right behind you.